One of the things that I learned a long time ago, actually in undergrad, was body awareness. I took an entire course on it. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about body awareness and how important it is for we're professional voice users and people in general. Hi, I'm Stacey Menton from SingingMamasHomestead.com, where we provide information for singers and professional voice users about vocal health and hygiene or vocal wellness on a path to whole person wellness. Alright, so let's talk about this awesome class I took in undergrad called Body Awareness. Now, I will tell you that when I first heard that I had to take a body awareness class as part of my musical theater minor, I remember thinking, this is just a little bit too over the edge for me. I was very straight-laced and a serious student. I had a sense of humor, of course, but I just didn't feel like I was very good at things where you had to be in tune with your body. Of course, it turns out that part of that is because I'm hypermobile, which is another video in and of itself. But this body awareness class ended up being one of the best classes I could have ever asked for in terms of making me more aware of what my body is doing. And it also kind of gave me a precursor for all of the courses that I was taking all of the courses that I ended up taking as a speech pathology student. So let's get into it. All right, so the first section of the body awareness course that I took was all about anatomy. We specifically just addressed anatomy of the bones and muscles. So we weren't doing all the different systems, although the coloring book that my professor had us purchase did have all of the different systems. And if you want to learn so much about the body, let me tell you, a coloring book is an awesome way to do it. Because you learn about where the things are within the body. And as you're coloring, it's giving you another method of feedback, which is wonderful for learning new things. For the brain to learn new things, it does better by having lots of different types of bombardment. So listening and reading and seeing, and this gives you a little bit of a tactile sense too. So you're looking at it and you're coloring. It was a great idea. So I'll put a link in the description below to the anatomy coloring book that we used in my undergrad course, or the newest version of that book. The second part of the body awareness class that I took was all about Alexander technique. Now, there were 3 sections, and the Alexander technique was the second section. Alexander was a Shakespearean orator in the late 1800s, and he kept losing his voice, and he couldn't figure out why. So he started to come to the conclusion that because he was doing a lot of neck moving forward neck posture, essentially, his voice wasn't working as well as it should. So he decided he was going to work on straightening this out, and it fixed his voice problem. So that technique has now been bled into an entire technique of how to stand and use your body. It's fabulous. Now, the instructor that I had training in Alexander technique, but she also believed in a little bit less about just up and also keeping the trunk and the legs engaged and feeling like there's, you're grounded as well. So she was a little bit more about pulling from both sides. My understanding of Alexander technique comes from that class. So it may be that she was adding something additional, or maybe it's actually still that's how it's taught. I'm not sure. But I will tell you that it helped me understand kind of how my head should be and how it should just kind of sit on top of my spine, and that you want to avoid this, which we all tend to do, this whole forward neck posture, because we're sitting and typing like this all the time. So the more you can kind of keep your neck up and feel like your head's just kind of almost floating on your spine. That is the biggest quintessential piece of Alexander technique from what I learned. Now, I'm not an instructor in this, so I can't really teach it, but it did help me be more aware of where I'm sitting, especially when singing, because we don't want extraneous muscle tension, and this reduces some of that extraneous muscle tension. So, Alexander Technique was the second portion of the class. And then the third section of this course was learning an entire yoga. I'm going to call it a routine, but I think it's probably more appropriate to call it a yoga practice. So what we learned was a routine from beginning to end, working on all of the different systems of the body and making you more aware of how your body can move and what the muscles feel like. So that anatomy piece that we had learned at the beginning, all of a sudden you're putting it into practice, being like, oh, I feel this stretch in my quadriceps, and I feel like my hamstring is engaged, and, my arms. It was an awesome piece to kind of make me a little bit more aware of where I am in space, or a kinesthetic sense, which is one. I learned a whole bunch about diaphragmatic breathing. I learned more about my posture and balance, learning that, if you're well balanced, then you're standing correctly. And if you could easily be toppled over, that might not be the best position to sing in most of the time, except for when you're doing crazy things on stage. So yoga was really helpful for that. All right, and then I still use the same practice that my instructor taught me, but during my pregnancies, some of the positions were not really appropriate for a pregnant woman, especially as I got along in my pregnancies. So I also used this book called Every Woman's Yoga. Every Woman's Yoga is a book by Jamie Stover Schmidt, and I'll put a link in the description below. And it was really helpful to kind of come together and be like, it helped me solidify how to create a routine for pregnancy. And I think there was even a section in the book about pregnancy and yoga. It was really helpful. And then the section I'd like to add here, which I think kind of ties in together all the things that we just talked about. So anatomy, and then Alexander Technique, and yoga. So by tying those three things together, I think what you'll find is that you're teaching yourself to listen to your body. Your body is constantly telling you lots of things. If something doesn't feel right, and because you're more aware of your body, you recognize when things don't feel right, you can catch things a lot earlier. So for instance, for singers, if something doesn't feel right, you're feeling like you're using more muscle than you used to, or you're getting hoarse faster, your body is trying to tell you that something's wrong. When that happens, as a professional voice user, you want to be going right to your voice care team. And I talk a whole bunch about a voice care team in a different video, and I'll put a link in the description below to that blog post. But you want to go to your voice care team, and specifically if there's something new and acute going on, you want to make sure you're getting in to see your fellowship trained laryngologist. They're your lifeline to the other members of your voice care team, which I, again, talk about in the other video. So please, if you start to notice that there's a change, you want to make sure you're seeking that medical attention right away. Your body's telling you stuff all the time. Just listen. All right, that about does it for today. Thanks for listening. I'm Stacey Menton from SingingMamasHomestead.com, and I wish you success on your wellness journey.